In the year 2078, something extraordinary happened. People on Earth had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. That question was finally answered when a massive spaceship descended from the sky. It didn't crash or explode like in the movies. Instead, it floated silently above Central Park in New York City, glowing with a soft light that made it look almost magical. The world stopped to watch. The spaceship belonged to an alien species called the Valens. They were tall and slender, with smooth silver skin that shimmered like moonlight. Their eyes were large and deep, as if they could see into your soul. But what really surprised everyone was how calm they seemed. There were no weapons, no threats, just a quiet presence that made people feel both curious and uneasy. The leader of the Valens introduced himself as Kalon. He spoke not with words but directly into people's minds. His voice was soothing, like a gentle breeze on a summer day. Through this telepathic connection, he explained why they had come. "We are explorers," Kalon said. "We wish to learn about your kind and decide if you can live peacefully among the stars." Earth's leaders quickly gathered to meet the visitors. Among them was Emily Carter, a diplomat known for her ability to solve tough problems. She was joined by John Harper, a military officer who kept his hand near his gun just in case. Together, they stood face to face with Kalon and his team, trying to figure out what these aliens wanted. Kalon told them that his people would need access to Earth's culture to understand humanity better. He asked for books, music, art, and films, anything that showed how humans thought and lived. At first, Emily was excited. This was a chance to show the best of humanity. She imagined sharing stories of love, courage, and discovery. What could go wrong? But John wasn't so sure. Why do they want all this? He whispered to Emily while the Valens waited patiently. What if they're looking for weaknesses? What if this is some kind of trick? Emily shook her head. "They don't seem dangerous," she replied. "Besides, we've been asking for contact with aliens for years. Now that they're here, we should make the most of it." So, humanity complied. Governments around the world sent their greatest works of art and literature. Movie studios handed over reels of classic films. Musicians shared symphonies and ballads. Everything was loaded onto special devices and given to the Valens. Everyone hoped this would be the beginning of a beautiful friendship. For weeks, the Valens studied the materials in silence. They stayed inside their ship, rarely speaking to their human hosts. Occasionally, Kalon would emerge to ask questions. "Why do your stories often end in tragedy?" he once asked Emily. "And why do you enjoy tales of war so much?" Emily tried to explain that storytelling was complicated. Sometimes, people told stories to warn others or to remember hard lessons from the past. War films, she said, weren't meant to glorify violence but to remind viewers of its cost. Kalon listened carefully, though his expression remained unreadable. As time went on, however, Emily began to notice something strange. The Valens seemed particularly interested in war films. Titles like Asterisk, Saving Private Ryan Asterisk, Asterisk Apocalypse Now Asterisk, and even older black and white movies about battles caught their attention. One day, she saw Sarah, one of Kalon's advisors, watching a scene where soldiers stormed a beach under heavy fire. Sarah's large eyes narrowed as if she were studying every detail. Emily felt a pang of unease. She had assumed the Valens would focus on more uplifting content, like stories of peace or exploration. But now, she wondered if she had made a mistake. Were these aliens seeing humanity as something different from what she had intended? Only time would tell. For now, the world held its breath, waiting to see what the Valens would do next. As days turned into weeks, Emily Carter found herself spending more and more time with Kalon. The Valen leader was curious about everything: how humans lived, how they thought, and why they created the things they did. Emily admired his patience and intelligence, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. One evening, after a long day of discussions, Kalon asked her to join him for what he called a cultural review. Inside the glowing alien ship, Emily sat beside Kalon as a screen flickered to life. On it played scenes from one of Earth's most famous war films, Saving Private Ryan. The opening sequence showed soldiers storming a beach under heavy fire, explosions tearing through the sand, and men falling in slow motion. Emily watched Kalon closely. His face remained calm, but his large eyes seemed to absorb every detail. When the scene ended, Kalon turned to Emily. "Why do you tell stories like this?" he asked. His telepathic voice carried no anger, only confusion. "If your goal is peace, why celebrate violence?" Emily hesitated. She had expected questions like this, but hearing them now made her realize how complicated human nature really was. "It's not about celebrating violence," she began carefully. "These films show the cost of war. They remind us of how terrible it is. We make them so we don't forget." Kalon tilted his head slightly, a gesture Emily had come to recognize as curiosity mixed with doubt. "But you enjoy watching them," he said. It wasn't a question, it was an observation. Your people gather in large groups to see these battles. You cheer for victories, even when they come at great cost. Emily opened her mouth to respond but stopped herself. How could she explain centuries of storytelling in just a few sentences? War films weren't just about battles. They were about courage, sacrifice, and the struggle to hold on to humanity in the darkest moments. But would Kalon understand that? Syra, Kalon's advisor, stepped forward. Her presence always made Emily feel uneasy. Unlike Kalon, Syra didn't seem interested in understanding humanity. She studied it like a scientist examining a specimen under a microscope. "These films are not warnings," Syra said firmly. "They are preparations. Your species rehearses for conflict constantly, in games, in stories, in simulations. Why else would you create such detailed depictions of warfare?" "That's not true," Emily protested. "We also make films about love, friendship, and hope. Those matter just as much." Syra tilted her head, mimicking Kalon's earlier gesture. "Yet your most celebrated works often involve destruction. Even your comedies mock authority and highlight betrayal. Do you trust anyone fully?" Emily glanced at Kalon, hoping he would intervene, but he remained silent. Instead, he gestured for another film to play. This time, it was Apocalypse Now, a story set during the Vietnam War. The screen showed helicopters sweeping over jungles, dropping bombs while loud music played. Emily winced as she saw Syra lean closer, studying the tactics used by the soldiers on screen. Later that night, back at her apartment, Emily couldn't stop thinking about the conversation. She called Daniel Brooks, a colleague who worked closely with her on diplomatic matters. "I think we have a problem," she admitted. "The Valens aren't seeing our films the way we intended. To them, it's like we're preparing for galactic domination." Daniel laughed nervously. "Surely they know it's just fiction. No one's going to invade another planet anytime soon." "You don't get it," Emily said sharply. "They don't separate fact from fiction the way we do. To them, everything we've shown them reflects who we are. What if they decide we're too dangerous to exist?" Daniel fell silent. After a moment, he sighed. "Maybe you're overthinking it. Let's wait and see what happens next." But Emily couldn't relax. The next morning, she visited the Valen ship again, hoping to clarify things further. When she arrived, Kalon greeted her warmly, though there was a new edge to his demeanor. "We have been analyzing your military projects as well," he said without preamble. Emily froze. "What do you mean?" "Our sensors detected classified transmissions," Kalon explained. "Plans for advanced weapons, strategies for space combat. You claim to seek peace, yet you prepare for war." Emily's heart sank. She realized then that the Valens weren't just misunderstanding humanity. They were starting to fear it. And fear, she knew, could lead to very dangerous outcomes. Emily Carter spent the next few days trying to fix the growing misunderstanding. She knew she had to act quickly before things got worse. The Valens were already suspicious, and their questions about Earth's military projects didn't help. Emily decided to organize a cultural exchange event, a chance for humans and Valens to share something positive. Maybe it would remind the aliens that humanity wasn't just about war and conflict. The event took place in Central Park, right below the glowing alien ship. Musicians played soothing melodies, poets read heartfelt verses, and artists displayed colorful paintings. There was even a section where filmmakers showed documentaries about Earth's achievements, how humans had cured diseases, explored space, and worked together to solve big problems. Emily hoped these displays would show the Valens a different side of humanity. Kalen attended the event with a small group of his people. He seemed interested, especially when a young girl handed him a drawing she had made of the Valen ship. "This is beautiful," Kalen said, his telepathic voice warm with appreciation. Emily felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this could work. But Syra, Kalen's advisor, was harder to impress. She wandered through the exhibits with a critical eye, stopping only to ask sharp questions. At one point, she approached a filmmaker who was explaining how documentaries were made. "Why do you focus so much on progress?" Syra asked. "Your history is filled with destruction. Why not admit that?" The filmmaker looked surprised but answered honestly. "Because we want to inspire people to do better. We learn from our mistakes." Syra didn't seem convinced. Her expression remained cold, as if she had already made up her mind about humanity. Later that evening, after the event ended, Emily met privately with Kalen. She wanted to clear up any lingering doubts. "I know some of your people are worried about us," she began. "But we're not perfect. We make mistakes, yes, but we also try to improve. That's what those films and stories are about. They teach us lessons." Kalen listened quietly. Then he said, "You have shown us many things today, Emily. But I must ask, why did you include a film called Dr. Strangelove in your archives? Is it meant to be humorous or prophetic?" Emily blinked, caught off guard. Dr. Strangelove was a satirical movie about nuclear war, full of dark jokes and absurd situations. To humans, it was a critique of Cold War paranoia. But to the Valens, it might look like a blueprint for disaster. "It's satire," Emily explained quickly. "It's supposed to make fun of the idea of nuclear war, not encourage it." Kalen tilted his head, his large eyes narrowing slightly. "Satire, humor at the expense of serious topics. Do all humans understand this distinction?" Emily hesitated. Not everyone did, of course, but she nodded anyway. "Most do. And those who don't still get the message that nuclear weapons are dangerous and should never be used." Kalen didn't respond right away. Instead, he turned to Syra, who stood nearby. "What do you think?" he asked. Syra crossed her arms. "I think humans are clever. They hide their intentions behind layers of meaning. This satire could easily be interpreted as a guide for future conflicts. After all, your species has already built weapons capable of destroying entire cities." Emily felt her stomach tighten. She glanced at Kalen, hoping he would disagree, but his expression was unreadable. For the first time, she wondered if the Valens truly believed humanity was a threat. That night, unable to sleep, Emily called Daniel Brooks again. "They're seeing everything as a warning sign," she told him. "Even our attempts to explain ourselves are making things worse." Daniel sighed. "Maybe we need to stop explaining and start listening. What do they want from us?" "I don't know," Emily admitted. "But if we don't figure it out soon, this could end badly." As she hung up the phone, Emily stared out her window at the glowing Valen ship in the distance. It hovered silently, a reminder of how fragile this situation was. She realized then that the Valens weren't just judging humanity. They were deciding whether to trust it. And trust, once broken, was hard to rebuild. The days that followed were tense. Emily Carter could feel the atmosphere shifting, like a storm brewing on the horizon. The Valens had grown quieter, retreating into their ship and limiting their interactions with humans. Even Kalen, who had once been so open to dialogue, seemed distant. Emily tried reaching out to him multiple times, but her messages went unanswered. It was as if the aliens were holding a meeting behind closed doors, debating what to do next. Meanwhile, John Harper, the military liaison, grew increasingly uneasy. He had always been skeptical of the Valens' intentions, and now his fears were growing stronger. Something's not right, he told Emily during one of their late-night meetings. They're up to something. Why else would they suddenly go silent? Emily wanted to believe the best, but even she couldn't ignore the signs. Satellite images showed unusual activity aboard the alien ship, flashes of light, movements of strange equipment, and what looked like preparations for something big. The U.S. government ordered reconnaissance drones to monitor the situation more closely. John assured Emily it was just a precaution, but she couldn't shake the feeling that humanity was walking a thin line between peace and disaster. One morning, Emily received an unexpected invitation from Kalon. He asked her to come aboard the Valen ship for a private discussion. Her heart raced as she agreed. She didn't know what to expect, but she hoped this was a chance to clear up the misunderstandings before it was too late. When she arrived, Kalon greeted her in a dimly lit chamber. The walls shimmered with soft, pulsating lights, giving the room an almost dreamlike quality. Cyrus stood nearby, her arms crossed and her expression unreadable. Kalon gestured for Emily to sit, then activated a screen on the wall. To her surprise, it displayed scenes from Dr. Strangelove *, the satirical film about nuclear war. "Explain this again," Kalon said calmly. "Is this humor or prophecy?" Emily took a deep breath. She had already explained the concept of satire, but she knew she needed to be clearer this time. "It's a joke," she said firmly. "A way of pointing out how ridiculous and dangerous nuclear weapons are. It's meant to make people laugh while also making them think." Kalon studied her face for a moment, then turned to Syra. "What do you see?" Syra stepped forward. "I see a detailed plan for nuclear strategy. I see leaders willing to risk everything for power. And I see a species that finds amusement in its own potential destruction." Emily felt a chill run down her spine. "That's not what it is," she insisted. "You're taking it too literally. Humans use humor to cope with fear. This movie isn't a guide. It's a warning." Syra's eyes narrowed. "A warning of what?" "That your species cannot resist the temptation to destroy itself, and possibly others." Before Emily could respond, Kalon raised a hand to silence them both. "Enough," he said. His voice was calm but carried a weight that made Emily freeze. "We have seen enough of your films, your documents, and your actions. Your species is conflicted. You claim to seek peace, yet you prepare for war. You create beauty, yet you revel in destruction. How can we trust you?" Emily's mind raced. She wanted to argue, to defend humanity, but she knew words alone wouldn't be enough. "Trust has to start somewhere," she said finally. "If you pull away now, we'll never have a chance to prove ourselves." Kalon didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned to Syra, who whispered something inaudible to him. Emily couldn't hear what they were saying, but she saw the tension in their body language. Whatever decision they were making, it wasn't going to be easy. Later that night, back at her apartment, Emily replayed the conversation in her mind. She realized the Valens weren't just judging humanity. They were testing it. Every action, every word, was being weighed against the possibility of future conflict. And if they decided humanity was too dangerous, there might not be a second chance. As she stared out her window at the glowing ship in the sky, Emily whispered to herself, "Please let us get this right." But deep down, she wasn't sure if humanity was ready for the responsibility of proving itself worthy of trust. The tension between humans and the Valens reached a breaking point. One morning, people around the world woke up to see strange drones hovering in the skies above major cities. The drones were small, sleek, and unlike anything humans had ever built. They moved silently, scanning everything below them with glowing sensors. At first, governments tried to stay calm. assuming the Valens were simply gathering more information. But when the drones began interfering with air traffic, causing planes to divert and communication signals to fail, panic started to spread. John Harper rushed to Emily Carter's office, his face pale with worry. "This isn't just observation anymore," he said. "They're testing us, seeing how we react." Emily nodded, her hands trembling as she flipped through reports on her tablet. "We need to respond carefully. If we overreact, it could make things worse." But careful responses weren't enough for some leaders. In Washington, D.C., President Laura Bennett called an emergency meeting with her advisors. "We can't just sit here while they disrupt our lives," she said firmly. "If they think they can push us around, they need to know we won't back down." Against Emily's advice, the U.S. government authorized limited military action. Fighter jets were sent to intercept the drones, using non-lethal weapons to disable them. The operation was meant to send a message. Humanity wouldn't tolerate being intimidated, but the message wasn't received the way they hoped. When news of the attacks reached Kalon, his calm demeanor shattered. He summoned Emily immediately, his telepathic voice sharp with anger. "You attacked us," he said, his large eyes blazing with intensity. "After all your talk of peace, you resort to violence at the first sign of conflict." "It wasn't an attack," Emily protested, her voice shaking. "It was a defensive measure. We thought your drones posed a threat to civilian safety." Syra stepped forward, her expression cold. "A threat? Or an excuse? Your species claims to value peace, yet your actions speak of aggression. These defensive measures are indistinguishable from hostility." Kalon turned away, his shoulders heavy with disappointment. For days, he had debated with his council about whether to trust humanity. Some argued that humans were too unpredictable, too prone to violence. Others believed there was still hope for coexistence. Now, the decision seemed clear. "Enough," Kalon said finally. "If this is how you respond to uncertainty, then we must act to protect ourselves and others." Before Emily could ask what he meant, alarms began blaring across Earth. The Valen ship unleashed a powerful energy pulse that rippled through the atmosphere. Satellites went dark, power grids failed, and communication networks collapsed. Cities plunged into chaos as lights flickered out and phones stopped working. It wasn't destruction, it was disruption. The Valens weren't trying to harm humanity directly but to cripple its ability to fight back. Emily watched in horror as the world descended into panic. She called Daniel Brooks, her voice trembling. "We've made a terrible mistake. They think we're a threat now." Daniel sighed heavily. "Maybe we are. Maybe they're right to be afraid of us." Determined to fix things, Emily returned to the Valen ship one last time. She begged Kalon to stop, explaining that the drone attacks had been a misunderstanding. "Please," she pleaded, "give us another chance. We're not defined by our worst moments." Kalon listened quietly, his expression unreadable. Finally, he spoke. "Very well," he said. "But there will be conditions. You must dismantle your nuclear arsenals. You must allow us to monitor your activities to ensure transparency. And you must prove that you are capable of change." Emily agreed without hesitation. She knew the terms were harsh, but they were better than the alternative. As the Valens withdrew their energy pulse and restored order, humanity breathed a collective sigh of relief. The crisis had been averted, for now. But as Emily walked away from the ship, she couldn't help wondering, had humanity truly learned anything? Or would this near disaster fade from memory, leaving them unprepared for the next challenge? Only time would tell. The fragile truce between humanity and the Valens came at a steep price. The conditions set by Kalon were strict, and governments around the world scrambled to comply. Nuclear weapons were dismantled under the watchful eyes of Valen monitors, who deployed sleek, hovering devices to ensure no hidden arsenals remained. Communication networks were rebuilt with Valen technology, allowing them to observe global activity in real time. It was clear that trust would not come easily or quickly. Emily Carter worked tirelessly to bridge the gap between humans and their alien overseers. She spent hours explaining Earth's cultures, politics, and history to Kalon, hoping to reassure him that humanity was capable of change. But even she couldn't ignore the growing resentment among people. Many saw the Vaylant's actions as an overreach, an invasion disguised as protection. Protests erupted in cities worldwide, with crowds chanting slogans like "Freedom or Nothing" and "Earth for Earthlings." John Harper, the military liaison, struggled to keep his emotions in check. He had always believed the Vaylants posed a threat, and now it seemed his fears were being proven right. "They've got us cornered," he told Emily during one of their late-night meetings. "We're playing by their rules while they hold all the cards." Emily sighed, rubbing her temples. "It's not about winning or losing, John. It's about survival. If we fight back now, we risk everything." "But at what cost?" John shot back. "How long until they decide we're still too dangerous and wipe us out completely?" Emily didn't have an answer. She knew the situation was precarious, but she clung to the hope that cooperation could lead to understanding. Still, doubts gnawed at her. Were the Vaylants truly trying to protect the galaxy, or were they just another power-hungry species? And if humanity couldn't meet their expectations, what would happen next? Kalon, meanwhile, faced challenges of his own. Back on the Vaylant ship, he gathered his council to discuss the ongoing situation. Syra argued fiercely for stricter measures. "Humans cannot be trusted," she said. "Their aggression is ingrained. Give them time, and they will rebuild their weapons, stronger than before." Kalon listened patiently, though his expression betrayed his inner turmoil. "And what would you have me do?" he asked. "Destroy them. Is that the example we wish to set for the galaxy?" Syra hesitated but didn't back down. "If peace is our goal, then we must act decisively. Humanity has shown it cannot govern itself without violence. Perhaps guidance is not enough." The room fell silent as Kalon considered her words. He had hoped to avoid such extremes, but the evidence against humanity was mounting. Their war films, their military projects, their recent attack on the drones, all pointed to a species teetering on the edge of chaos. Yet he also remembered Emily's pleas, her insistence that humanity was more than its worst instincts. Could he take that gamble? Days turned into weeks, and the Vaylants continued their monitoring. Slowly, life on Earth began to stabilize. Power returned to cities, and communication systems hummed back to life. People adapted to the presence of Vaylant technology, though grudgingly. Some even began to see the aliens as guardians rather than invaders, crediting them with preventing a potential nuclear catastrophe. But beneath the surface, tensions simmered. In secret meetings, world leaders debated how to regain control. Some suggested finding ways to disable the Vaylant monitors. Others proposed building new weapons undetectable by alien sensors. Emily tried to intervene, warning that any act of defiance could reignite conflict. But her voice often went unheard in rooms filled with fear and anger. One evening, Emily stood alone in Central Park, staring up at the glowing Vaylant ship. It hovered silently, a constant reminder of humanity's fragility. She thought about all the films and stories the Vaylants had studied. The wars, the betrayals, the struggles for power. Had those tales painted an accurate picture of humanity, or had they missed the moments of kindness, creativity, and hope that made life worth living? As she turned to leave, a soft voice interrupted her thoughts. "Emily." She spun around to see Kalon standing nearby, his silver form shimmering in the moonlight. "Kalon," she said, surprised. "What are you doing here?" "I wanted to speak with you," he replied, "away from the noise of your world." Emily nodded, sensing the weight of his words. "What is it?" Kalon paused, his large eyes searching hers. "Tell me, Emily, can your species truly change? Or are we only delaying the inevitable?" Her heart sank. She wanted to say yes, to promise him that humanity was ready to rise above its flaws. But the truth was more complicated. "I don't know," she admitted softly, "but I believe we can try." Kalon studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Perhaps that is enough." For now. As he walked away, Emily realized the hardest part was yet to come. Trust, once broken, took time to rebuild, and time was something neither side was sure they had. Months passed, and the world slowly adjusted to life under Valen oversight. The glowing alien ship remained a constant presence in the sky, a reminder of both humanity's fragility and its potential for destruction. People grew used to seeing Valen drones scanning cities and monitoring military bases. Some accepted the situation as necessary for peace, while others simmered with resentment, waiting for a chance to reclaim control. Emily Carter continued her work as a liaison between humans and the Valens. She spent countless hours explaining human behavior to Kalon, trying to show him that not all conflict was born from malice. "We make mistakes," she told him one day, "but we also learn from them. Isn't that worth something?" Kalon listened quietly, his large eyes reflecting a mix of curiosity and doubt. "Learning is only meaningful if it leads to change," he said. "Will your species remember this moment when we are gone?" Emily didn't have an answer. She wanted to believe humanity would grow wiser, but history showed that lessons were often forgotten once the immediate danger passed. Still, she held on to hope. If nothing else, the Valens had forced humanity to confront its darker impulses, and perhaps that was a step forward. John Harper, however, couldn't shake his distrust of the aliens. He watched as governments dismantled weapons and submitted to Valen surveillance, feeling like they were trading freedom for safety. "They're not here to help us," he muttered during one of his meetings with Emily. "They're here to control us." "They're here because they don't know what else to do," Emily replied. "Would you trust a species that builds bombs and writes war stories? Think about it, John. We haven't made it easy for them." John frowned but said nothing. Deep down, he knew Emily had a point, but it didn't make the situation any easier to accept. As time went on, the Valens began to loosen their grip slightly. Kalon announced that his people would soon depart, leaving behind automated monitors to ensure compliance. "This is not a punishment," he explained. "It is a test. Show us that you can live without violence, and we will reconsider our judgment." The announcement sparked mixed reactions. Some celebrated the partial withdrawal, seeing it as proof that humanity had earned a second chance. Others saw it as a trap, believing the Valens would return if given a reason. Emily tried to reassure everyone, but even she felt uneasy. What would happen if humanity failed this test? On the day the Valens prepared to leave, Emily stood in Central Park, watching as their massive ship hummed with energy. Kalon approached her one last time, his silver form glowing softly in the sunlight. "You have been a good friend, Emily," he said. "I hope your species proves me wrong." "I hope so too," Emily replied, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for giving us this chance." Kalon nodded, then turned and walked back toward his ship. Moments later, the vessel rose into the sky, disappearing into the clouds with a flash of light. The crowd below cheered, but Emily remained silent, her mind heavy with thoughts of the future. In the weeks that followed, life returned to a semblance of normalcy. Governments worked to rebuild trust with their citizens, promising transparency and cooperation. Artists and filmmakers began creating new stories, tales of unity and hope, meant to inspire rather than divide. Even John softened slightly, admitting that the Valen's departure felt like a fresh start. But Emily couldn't forget the lessons of those tense months. Late one night, she sat alone in her apartment, staring at an old war film playing on her screen. The explosions and gunfire filled the room, loud and chaotic. She reached for the remote and turned it off, leaving only silence. "What are we really saying with these stories?" she whispered to herself. "Are we warning ourselves or preparing?" For now, humanity had been given a reprieve. But Emily knew the true test lay ahead. Would they rise to meet it, or would they fall back into old habits? Only time would tell. And until then, the memory of the Valens and their doubts would linger like a shadow over Earth's fragile peace.